I wanted to talk about our big oak table as we were raising our children in Connecticut. Based on my upbringing and my genuine like for people, we used our very large, very big oak table with its 4 or 5 extensions, about this wide, really big. And then it had extensions, 4 or 5 extensions that were about that each. So we could include many at our dinner table, Thanksgiving or not. And we did. Anyone was welcome to join us for dinner. So I grew up learning how to expand a meal to more, and we just pulled up more chairs. I enjoyed the challenge and the interesting children and adults we got to know. The oak table was big enough. I was not. One of our grade school children formed a friendship with a child that, for what unknown reason, I took exception to. Rather than stop the friendship that works so well with children, I invited the family to dinner. At the dinner table, their rather rough-edged manners and halting conversation came to full light. I did nothing to help them. Unlike my mother, I did not find a way to help them feel comfortable and valued. The friendship faded away. How sad, an opportunity missed. My lines of exclusion were not based on race or sexual orientation, nor politics, nor creed. They have been based on socioeconomic and cultural values. Gosh, what a fool I was, and how ashamed I am of that behavior. Not only did I hurt others, I failed myself. I am learning to recognize such limitations. It can be done with the light of inclusion and welcoming education within our fellowship and within Unitarian Universalism. I need this enlightening, this uncovering of my blindness. We all fail ourselves and others. In this faith community, we actively seek how to recognize our limitations so we can act better. My gratitude here today is that I can speak this to you and know that you will still accept me as who I still am. Thank you.
I hope everyone here had a nice Thanksgiving. I know the holidays can be difficult for many, but for many, it's also a joy. And around the Thanksgiving holiday, people get together, especially with family, but sometimes with friends. Family especially can be stressful, but can also be a source of reassurance and stability. More than that, though, I think the feeling of Thanksgiving runs deep. For many, it goes beyond just a repetition or rote thing, but it's in the body and in the senses. Maybe it's mixed in there somewhere with the taste of turkey and stuffing, or the feeling of a warm kitchen, and the smells of cooking around, and the sounds of chaos in the house around you. By yearly repetition alone, being given the space and opportunity to gather and be thankful can make it a meaningful event. But many also have bad associations with this time. And for some people, it's a reminder of family and friends they cannot see or have lost. Like Gloria Esposito, it can be a reminder of what others have that they do not. When if you do not have a family or do not have people close to you to gather with. At its worst, though, being thankful can be selfish. It can become reveling in one's own privilege. That our stomachs are full, our houses are warm, without thinking about others. Now, personally, over the last dozen years or so, Thanksgiving has been a holiday that I actually often skipped. After my divorce starting 12 years ago with the separation, I would generally take Christmas and my ex-wife would have Thanksgiving. So My son and I would fly out to the East Coast for Christmas to spend with my family, and I wasn't going to fly twice in a season, so I spent most Thanksgiving here, sometime with friends, sometimes just by myself. I'm emotionally detached from it to a degree, so trying to use that time to relax and recharge. The very first Thanksgiving after my separation, though, a good friend here invited me to her Thanksgiving gathering. She had an open table, which many people would join in, like uh, um, like Jeanne's mother and Jeanne herself. And I was feeling very low at that time, and I remain grateful to her for that invitation. It felt like a continued connection for me when my life was very disrupted otherwise. In the wider country, Thanksgiving Day also has many other negatives. For many, it's a day of mourning. There is a national day of mourning that's been declared from that over protests. For them, that day represents oppression and the stealing of lands. And the myth of Thanksgiving is as a time of peace and sharing between the Plymouth colonists and the Wampanoag. But that's in stark contrast to the overall reality of how Europeans have conquered lands across North America. Even for people who acknowledge this history, who see those divides, though, they can't easily set aside the need that holiday fills for the time of thankfulness, the warm kitchen, the foods we eat, whatever foods those are. When I grew up with my extended family, there would be turkey, but there would also be Korean kimbap and japchae brought by my aunts and uncles. For many, the tradition fills a need on a more primal level. And unfortunately, this can lead to indulging in Thanksgiving, while at the same time feeling bad about feeling good. We feel good, but then we feel guilty, as indeed, as Jeanne spoke of. It's maybe we didn't do enough. Maybe we're happy, but we haven't contributed enough to others. But so I'd like to suggest as part of a different way to think about that. That part of what we're adding is adding chairs to that table. Yes, the Thanksgiving traditional myth is wrong, but besides that myth, there's another reality that's broader than that, because America has been celebrating this, and America has many different cultures who've all shared in this. There's a reality of people who share, who invite others, and who spread their happiness around, and that's can be seen as a first step, even if we're not perfect, and no one has been perfect. These include immigrant families of many different cultures, like my Korean family, who would all celebrate it, and there are cultures of all sorts who all share in this tradition. I think the tradition of the feast, of sharing, and of thankfulness has a lot to offer. Rather than indulging and regretting or thinking backwards, we can use that thankfulness as a bridge to more. We can try to take on more, and more than regrets, we can look with hope to what we can do more. And adding chairs to the table can be as literal as inviting people who are in need of celebration, or even after you've already invited them, an extra step. Another chair to add is how welcome you make them feel. And like my friend Shannon, who invited me in after my divorce, not her divorce, she's still married, thankfully. Many people celebrate Friendsgiving, which should just really be Thanksgiving, and part of the tradition, because friends and community members are part of our family here. It's part of what the community tradition is. And including people in need and fully welcoming those who invite is part of added chairs. And going broader than this, there's other things that we can add. Just as we add chairs to the table, we can add thanks to different sources. We can add to our traditions and include acknowledgements for what we have and where they came from. There are spaces we can add to our traditions without throwing away what came before. That's how traditions evolve. the Thanksgivings of today are very different than the Thanksgivings of 100 years ago or 200 years ago. George Washington declared a day of Thanksgiving, which was very different than those today, but it's part of that same tradition. I'm thankful for my family, old and new, for this community, and for the beautiful land that we live on here in Redwood City, and for our earth. I think we should respect them all. We can make space in our thanks to give acknowledgements of those who came before us. On this land here, right, around in the sanctuary, those who are online can still see it and remember it, even though you were not here. Was there, here in this land, the earliest evidence of settlements was between 4,000 and 6,000 years ago by the Yalamu of the early Ohlone. Thousands of years later, this came to be the country of the Ramaytush Ohlone. Specifically, the Ramchin, whose main village was just south of downtown San Carlos. So that's would be about 2 miles off that way. So this would have been a circle of reed huts with a little over 100 people. Where we stand would be an easy walk for people there that they would regularly range through, collecting food or hunting. Part of the space we add to our tradition can be acknowledgement of these people who still live here. The Ramaytush Ohlone have an association founded by Jonathan Cordero and Greg Castro, who work to educate the public and help others of Ohlone descent. And I'd like to give some special acknowledgement to the center of interest of the month, which is over here to my right. Take a moment. Yes, it's put together by Riley DeCarty. Has a scattering of acorns across the background, pinned to the back, which is one of the staples of the local diet. There's a setting of beautiful colored feathers above, which are not natural or native, but could represent the sky, and feathers were used in decorations. A scattering of plants and seashells below, along with the woven basket, stands for the beauty of the earth and the bounty of the sea. I think it's a great expression of the history of the land here. It's been sitting there this whole month, but it doesn't have to. It just adds to our tradition. It hasn't taken away from any of our services. In our personal Thanksgivings, we can give acknowledgement to the Ramaytush who lived here and still do, along with subsequent peoples who've come to this land, Spanish, Chinese, English. They've all had their flaws. But they also have depth and meaning to their own traditions, which we can add to our own personal traditions. According to the Ohlone curriculum by Beverly Ortiz, which is suggested by the Ramaytush Association, Ohlone cultural values include respect for yourself and for other people and for everything in the natural world. Generosity, giving back what you take. 3 is fair play, thinking about others before thinking of yourself. 4, 5, patience, and 6, a sense of humor. I think these 6 fit well with our own 7 UU principles. Maybe we could stand to add a little bit of humor to our principles, but I'd encourage people to read more about them because it's a rich tradition that can add to our own beliefs. For the wider earth, another way that we can celebrate is to consider the impact that we're having. We still gather and eat. We also think about what ways that impacts and think of ways to acknowledge it and change it. I've personally continued to have turkey in my celebrations, but in other times I've begun to shift away from meat overall because of the greater impact it has on the environment. So I've thought about within my celebrations, including more vegetarian options at the center of celebrations. And this year, I spent time cooking mushroom lasagna and sweet potato casserole with my son. Maybe in the future we'll skip the turkey, maybe not, but we're still keeping the tradition. It's The mashed potatoes, the green beans, the squash, the pumpkin pie, that's all there as part of it. We don't have to let go of things. These, or throw away what we have. Those are part of our memories. These chairs that we add to our table, as well as the thanks and the spaces that we can add, make our Thanksgivings richer. It's a bridge between a past that we still cherish, a future that we'd like to see. And I hope that by keeping our past, that bridge can be a firmer foundation rather than teetering between indulgence and guilt. Is that these guilt or regrets are, well, they don't do us good, they don't do other people good. And we'll still have it. We'll still have regrets, but but as we think about it, I think I'd encourage us to think about adding and growing. Thank you. My first sermon, I suppose.